Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the 2020 Masjid Muhammad Ramadan session. I have the unique pleasure of introducing the next three speakers. We're going to change up the format a little bit, as most of you can see. We have resident Imam Wazir Ali. Imam Dr. Wazir Ali is the Imam of the historic Masjid Muhammad and Masjid Al-Quran in Houston. Both communities have experienced unprecedented growth under Dr. Ali's leadership. Masjid Muhammad was built in 2010, the first masjid built from the ground up after the passing of our leader, Imam Muhammad, and continues to expand to this day, inshallah. By the end of 2011, we will have our community center up and running. And so Masjid Muhammad continues to grow and change, and it is able to bring programs like this because of Imam Dr. Wazir Ali's leadership and the leadership of his community and leadership team. Imam Dr. Ali is a founding member of Masjid Al-Quran. Under Dr. Ali's leadership, the average weekly Juma attendance grew from 10 to over 500. Dr. Ali completed an 8-year mentorship program in Islamic studies, comparative religion, and masjid administration under the guidance of our esteemed Imam, Hazm Ahmed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him and forgive him the sins. Imam Ali is also a student of the preeminent American Muslim scholar, the late Imam Muhammad. May Allah have mercy on him. Imam Dr. Ali, an entrepreneur, kinesiologist, registered dietitian, and board-certified specialist in geriatric nutrition, owns a private nutrition consulting firm in Houston. Imam Dr. Ali is also the interim director of dietetics program and a clinical instructor at Texas Southern University. And so we welcome Dr. Wazir Ali. We also have with us Imam Abdullah Rasheed, an entrepreneur and member of Houston's Islamic community in Texas. He is a dedicated student of the eminent scholar Imam Muhammad, an associate imam at Masjid Muhammad and Masjid Al-Quran. He is a participant in education and community building efforts. He serves as Islamic Weekend School administrator and has taught several classes related to Islamic science, including Quranic Arabic, Sirah, and Tafsir. And online right now, he has a beginner's Arabic and an intensive Arabic course that is going global, that has gone around the world, flourishing in this online environment that we find ourselves in terms of COVID-19. And one of his efforts at the masjid was to help us complete our community playground, which is now up and running and is waiting for us to be able to put in our final piece of swing set, inshallah, very soon. An entrepreneur, he is co-founding a crowdfunding platform, No Rich Uncle, to help businesses raise over 450. I think that's that helped businesses raise over 450,000 in 3 months. He also recently co-founded with his wife a baby product company named Umi Diapers, and release a high-quality, eco-friendly diaper. The diapers shipped over 25 cities within 6 months of its launch. He is also dedicated to community outreach and regularly assists national and local programs such as Camp Khalil, our beloved Muslim journal, Conf, Need to Feed, and others. His most valuable characteristics is his humility, courage, and his desire to help others. One of his favorite phrases is, if you strive with inadequate resources, Allah will bless you with adequate resources. Rasheed holds a bachelor's degree in computer science and is an accomplished software architect and engineer. He's a family man with the greatest fulfillment coming from raising his young son. And finally, our final panelist is Imam Hanif M. Khalil, a graduate of Florida State University with high honors, with a Bachelor's of Science in Sports Management. In 23, he co-founded, along with his wife, Baina Khalil, Camp Khalil Incorporated. And Camp Khalil is the predominant Muslim youth leadership program, of which I used to serve on the board. Is designed to empower youth with the knowledge and skills necessary to become global leaders, impacting our social fabric by positively affecting change in the areas of business, education, politics, and culture. He is an Imam at both Masjid Muhammad and Masjid Al-Quran. He has spent most of his career in the intersection between sports, technology, and entrepreneurship. You will see him on his webpage doing interviews now with sports figures with his as the president and chief visionary of Crescent Sports Media. So if you want to follow him online at Hanif Khalil, you can see some of those accomplishments and some of those interviews as well. He also provides career management and consulting services to professional athletes striving to achieve success on and off the playing field. He is the Conf. In October 2010, Hanif founded New American Leadership and Entrepreneurial Academy with a mission to empower youth ages 11 to 17 to become effective leaders, citizens, and entrepreneurs through skill development for academic and social success. Hanif has traveled to over 6 African countries as part of the innovative excursion connecting entrepreneurs and innovators from around the globe. In his spare time, Hanif loves reading, playing basketball, discussing social issues, and spending time with friends and family. Imam Hanif and Bayani Khalil reside in Houston, Texas with their 2 children, Kamal and Asya. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Ramadan Mubarak. All right, and you are all still muted, so I will unmute you again from here, but I think you are muted on your own sides.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu and Ramadan Mubarak. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulih al-Kareem Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in amma ba'da. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Sayyidina Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in amma ba'da. That is, all praise is due to Allah, the guardian evolver, cherisher, sustainer, nurturer of everything, of all the systems of knowledge. We witness that none deserves worship except Allah, and we witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is Allah's servant and his messenger, the one whom he raised up from among an illiterate people and ignorant people. He recited upon them the signs of Allah, purified them. He taught them the book and the wisdom, when before this they were far away from guidance. O Allah, send prayers and peace, the highest exaltation upon Muhammad, upon his family, his companions, who called to the way of their Lord with wisdom and excellent preaching, and may Allah be pleased with them all. Amma ba'da, and concerning what comes next, I advise you, as well as I advise myself, to first fear Allah and thereafter be obedient to him. We want to welcome in our global audience to the 2020 Masjid Wadathadeen Muhammad Ramadan session, our conference, the last 2 parts, which is really 1 part, the last part of our presentation for today, Saturday, May 2nd, 2020. As we enjoy the fruits of the month of Ramadan, we pray that you and your family have been benefiting from this month of Ramadan, however unusual this Ramadan may be for you, however uncustomary it may be for you. Ramadan is still a blessed time. And when the believer is under unusual circumstances, he goes back to his what defines his life, what defines his focus, what gives him focus, and that is his faith. So today we're going to have a very important and timely conversation. Myself, Imam Abdullah Rasheed, and Imam Hanif Khalil. We're going to have a very timely presentation today. But before I say that, I want to thank all the presenters this weekend. Who we started on Friday afternoon, and we've gone through strong to now. All the presenters, all the insightful presentations, all the knowledge and information that was shared, the wisdom from the Quran, the wisdom from the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We want to thank you all for your presentations, and we have presenters from all around the country presenting today. And alhamdulillah, everybody is enjoying, those of you who are enjoying our Ramadan session now. has a worldwide audience. When in the past, it may have been just there at the Houston Masjid al-Islam, our Masjid Wadaduddin Muhammad. Although we used to stream it, live. I think that our engagement is much broader this year, inshallah. And we pray that Allah will benefit everyone whose ears the information presented this weekend touch. Allah says in the Quran, Alam a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alam nashrah laka sadrak wa wada'na anka wizrak alladhi anqadha dhahrak wa rafa'na laka dhikrak fa inna ma'al usri yusra inna ma'al usri yusra fa idha faragta fansab wa ila rabbika farghab. And that is translated, did we not expand your breasts and remove the burden that was on your back and raise up for you your thinking? Certainly with every difficulty comes relief, with every difficulty comes relief. Therefore, when you are finished with the immediate task, still labor hard toward your Lord. The reason I begin with that quote is because I was reading just today, as I was preparing for this presentation or this discussion, I was reading a transcript from the 1995. It was 1995, 25-year anniversary. I'm sorry, this had to be 2000. I'm sorry, this was April. We just finished April 8th, 2000. This was around 20 years ago. And at that time, it was the 25th year anniversary of Imam Wadaduddin Muhammad coming into leadership. And I want to just read to you something that touched me. And I want to have us see it in the context that we have this this conversation tonight. So Imam Muhammad said, I'm going to read it. He said, so pressure makes the muscle strong. So the muscle got strong. I'm determined to prove the white man, and he was speaking in the context, so I have to clarify that. He was speaking in the context of slavery and the dehumanization of the slave. So I'll go back. And so I did it like that so that we can appreciate what happens when you take something and you take it out of its context, right? So I'll go back. We couldn't do that because all the connections with the past have been denied us when we couldn't make a connection anymore. So we were without anything to feed upon but what God gave us originally. And that is the human soul. That is the human urge to grow in human excellence. That's all we had. And the slave rebelled. This is pressure, isn't it? Slavery was pressure. Denying us our humanity was pressure. All of this was pressure, all right? And ignorance is a void. Pressure and a void. Here we don't have knowledge, the void. We didn't have anything to fall upon as education, as past knowledge, as past history, nothing to fall upon. So that's a void, a big void. And here's all the pressure, the lies against our humanity, saying that they're illegitimate, that they're not legitimate human beings, we're illegitimate. We wanted to validate our worth, the urge in us to validate our worth. So pressure makes a muscle strong. So the muscle got strong. Oh, I am determined. I am determined to prove the white man. To him, I am equal to him. I am a human creation equal to his. So I'm determined to prove that he is a liar. He is lying against my humanity. I am determined to defend my humanity and prove him a liar. Now, I don't know about all of you. I don't think it's all of you, all but a certain number of you have been straining with this for so long, until we are really giants in human excellence. I remember a fella that the tough boys used to pick on all the time. They used to whip him every time he came out of his house. That boy got so tough. After about 5 years, he started whipping all of them. And that's what happened to us. The world had been whipping us for so long, for all these centuries. They have made us so tough now, we could whip up on them, but we're super tough. So we won't. So we want to help them. So in conclusion, I have observed that pressure makes a thing stronger, especially a living organism. If it's a living organism, it becomes stronger. And I also studied and come to understand that a void is pressure. How is it pressure? It's empty. So gravity makes it want to suck in something. I want to suck in something because it's empty. So here is the empty head that wants to suck in something. You empty my head, I want to suck in something. Muhammad said the black man's head can suck in the universe. He say suck in the whole sky. He can suck in the stars. He can suck in the moon. He can suck the sun into his head. We all tried to do that, and it sure made the mental muscle strong. We tried to do it, and it made the mental muscle strong. So I'm going to stop there, because the emphasis of that was pressure and void. Pressure and void. There's a whole lot of pressures on us, and there's a whole lot of voids in our community life. So the first topic that I want to discuss, and that I want us to discuss, and I'll ask the question to both you, Abdullah, and you, Imam Hanif, and that is on the continuity of leadership in the community. There are some who have suggested that there's a challenge with leadership in the community, especially the indigenous Muslim community, who came from the leadership of Imam Wazir Muhammad, that there are not enough of the next generation available to step into positions of leadership. Now, we know that that's not the case in every city. And I'm not saying that is even correct, but I'm saying that is a perception. So the first question is, how do we address the perception of, or the real problem of, a lack of continuity of leadership in our community? And if it is a reality that in many cities around the country, we have leadership that has been on the job for 30, 40 years, and yet they don't have enough support coming to continue the work that they've been doing. For this one, we'll call on Imam Abdullah Rasheed first.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Thank you, Imam Wazir Ali, and thank you, Imam Hanif, for joining me. And thank you, community, Masjid Wazir Muhammad, and all of those that are listening for having me on this panel. That's an excellent question, Imam. I think I'd like to answer in two parts. The first part directly addressing the issue or the perception of the issue or reality of a continuity in leadership when it comes to the role of Imam. And then secondly, I'll just make comments on leadership in general. So firstly, when it comes to your statement about imams or leaders who've been on a job for 30, 40 years, I haven't been around to every city, so I'm not sure of the total reality. But I do know that some cities are much stronger, are much more equipped than others. And I can speak on maybe there's something that I witnessed and that I've been a part of here in Houston. When I was in my 20s, I turned from 19, I turned 20. I had at that time I was making the transition. I would say back into being conscious and being very serious. And Imam Wazir, he spotted and noticed that, and he pulled me into the fold, I would say, of the work, and he assigned me responsibility, and he helped train me. And that training went on intensely for 3 years, and it's still going on. That training and mentorship is still going on. And that was, well, it wasn't me alone. It was maybe 10, 11, 12 other brothers. And then from that group grew a 2.0, a 3.0, and those included sisters, those different successive cohorts. So I'm saying that to say that yes, yes, we do have deficits in the community. We do. There are some cities who maybe they had a system, or they have the available people. So they train individuals to help come into leadership, and whether or not they've taken the position as resident imam, or as the for the lack of a better term, the head leader. They are supporting that imam who's on the job, and there's a leadership body that has been formed. But then there are communities where for whatever reason they have not been able to pull in other people into the leadership and continue the mission on in that place. But what was unique for me was that when I was ready and I turned to the community, there was a system in place, and I was plugged in. I sort of made a turn in my direction. You know, Allah says, and we will turn you to a qibla. I turned in my direction, and then I was sort of pulled into the fold. And then there was responsibility, there was expectations, and then I had reinforcements of other strong leaders who were around to challenge me, to take on to challenge and demonstrate what it looked like to take on the responsibility. So yes, I do feel, and I do consciously, as I look around our community, think that there is a deficit. But one of the things that we've been able to do here, starting with Imam Qasim Ahmed, was create a system where we can reproduce leaders, and imams in particular. But the second part of my answer, and I don't want to be too long-winded, is what I'm finding even here in Houston, but Imam Wazir has done an excellent job here, and the others here that are working. What I find around the country is that we have leaders, young people who are professionals, and they are leaders in their field. I mean, we have Muslims who are VPs of engineering firms. We have Muslims who are doctors, who are lawyers, who in their particular firm, or their particular organization, they are looked at as a critical member, a critical mind, that the success of the organization or the company, that success depends on that person. So they're a critical person who's become proficient and mature. And what I find is that we are very imam centric in our community, and I don't find enough appreciation for, as Allah says in the Quran, or as Jacob told his sons to go through different doors, and as Imam Muhammad rahimahullah has commented on, us building a world-class community we would need leaders of different areas that can contribute and make contributions in their particular field of expertise. So one, retraining imams, but then two, bringing in men and women who are proficient in their particular area of expertise, bringing them in, welcoming them in, making them feel valuable, and putting them to work and allowing them the room and space to make their contribution to the community. So we look at the imam position as a high office. It is a very important role and very important office, as our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he modeled that role. But he also had men and women around him, proficient in war, proficient in business, proficient in the medical in medicine, who he allowed to, as Imam Muhammad said, he would just come up on a thing. He didn't micromanage. He would come up on a thing and he would see it, something being built, something was excellent, and he would make comments and say, well, what a wonderful work this is. So he allowed for and utilized the proficiencies in the community. So that's another thing. Training the imams, having a system to reproduce imams, and then also having a system and a broad enough capacity and a broad enough leadership perspective to allow those who are proficient to come in and welcome them in to help the community, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you, Imam Abdullah. Imam Hanif, do you want to add anything?
First and foremost, Assalamu alaikum wa Ramadan Mubarak to everyone, and my fellow panelists, Assalamu alaikum and Ramadan Mubarak to you. I feel honored and privileged to be on this particular panel, and I'm humbled actually to be on this panel. If I can add anything to what Imam Abdullah Rasheed just articulated, would be just a couple of quick things. One, I think first and foremost, I would like to extend on what he talked about as far as Imam-centric. I think growing up in this community, we had a lot of heavy emphasis on imams, and imams were the ones that the leaders of the community would look towards to find the next imam, the next young imam. And I think that's what Imam Qasim Ahmed did with you, Imam Wazir, is he identified a person right in his peer view that would qualify for leadership. And he saw that, he did exactly what Imam Muhammad said, was to teach and train the next generation. And I think what happened with that is that there was, you mentioned about a void. A lot of young people at that particular age, if they didn't see themselves as imams, they kind of fell to the wayside, and they didn't get the nurturing and the attention that was needed. And so what you saw is that there had been a gap in leadership across the staff, if you will, of qualified people to help the imams in their position and their role. So that's the first thing to extend on what Imam Abdullah Rasheed mentioned. The second thing, from a youth perspective, I know myself, Imam Wazir, we came up in an environment where we had conventions, we had young adult conferences. So you can see each other's skill set expressed. You can see what people were doing, what they were studying in college. And then not only from the young adult conference, you'll be able to see convention as well. You will see, imams and how they would conduct their business, how they would give talks, how they would express their scholarship. And so there was, I'm mentioning that to say this, the work that we have done as a community with Camp Khalil, we're developing a younger generation, but what's happening is that that young generation doesn't have anything to feed into. So we don't have the conventions like we regularly had before. We don't have the young adult conferences anymore. So that's the void that we can fill, is by having a system in place. We can have activities in place where we can see that youthful leadership taking place. So once they graduate from a program like Camp Khalil, we need a feeder system so that the rest of the community can see that there's other leaders that are up and coming. Because there's a lot of young people that are doing some wonderful things, and inshallah we'll be able to hear from them tomorrow. But without us being together in a community and seeing each other grow and develop as a community, the perception begins to take on the reality that there's not enough leadership. So I'll stop there, but I think those are two things that I would like to contribute to the conversation at this point.
Okay, alhamdulillah, thank you. So this has to be real talk. If it's not real, if we only have a conversation that's centered around pleasantries, then we do ourselves a disservice, right? So one of the main things that we have to be able to do is have a mature look at an issue, assess it, identify its strength, identify opportunities for improvement, and then act upon those to the best that we can. So you both already started to answer my next question, but now I'm going to tie it into something that Imam Hanif that you said, and that is without, because there are conferences going on, and my intention tonight is not to criticize anything that's going on, but we acknowledge there's conferences going on. There are conventions going on. There are a couple conventions going on every year, and there have been efforts to restart conferences, but there's been no continuity and there's been no consistency. Is there anything that you think can be done in terms of engaging that next generation? Because my next question was on getting all generations involved. Because if we look at it, I'm a generation, Imam Abdullah Rasheed, you're a generation, but there's a generation, there's 2 generations under you. If we define generation by 15 years or so, so you just turned 30, so that 18, 17, 16, that's a different generation, right? And then there's a younger generation, so there's a baby generation, right? So we have now for 12 years, we've had nothing consistently that was consistently supported. I'll put it like that. You've had conferences and there have been consistent conferences. There's been conferences every year, but for one reason or another, the support for those conferences did not mirror the support that it did during the lifetime of Imam Wadaduddin Muhammad. So in that way, we have 2 generations now that don't have the connection. Is there anything that we can start to do to build those connections? And we'll go to you, Imam Hanif.
Yeah, so I think what Imam Abdullah Rasheed described, and I know a little bit of the history between the relationship with you and him and how he became more conscious of his responsibility in the community, is that you met him where he was. So I think that's where we need to start. We have to meet our young people where they are. Because if we try to pull them into what is already going on, I don't think it's attractive enough, because if it was, they would be here. So we have to meet them where they are and offer something to them that's attractive, that meets their interests, their needs, and their wants. And we have to begin to present the religion in a way that gives its full universal picture, so that, like Imam Abdullah Rasheed mentioned, that there's doors that have already been opened where they can just go into. So what that's going to take is going to take systems, it's going to take strategy, it's going to take us making sacrifices, it's going to take us coming together to develop and codify the work that has been done, look at our mistakes, look at our best practices, and begin to reevaluate what we're doing. So we need more systems in place to identify young leaders in their talents, their skill set, and how they can make a contribution. The soul, everybody has in their soul a want to make a contribution, to want to be in cooperation with those amongst us in the community. And I believe that Imam Muhammad has given us many tools, many avenues for us to pick up where we were at that particular time, and then add to it and be able to expound on it. But I believe we have the talent pool, we have the resources, we have everything that we need. It's just a matter of us coming together to strategize and reevaluate where we are, and be able to open up opportunities where everybody feels like that they have a sense of contribution that they can give and they can offer.
Imam Abdullah?
Yes, sir. So I had 3 quick points. I'll be very, very brief with each one. And please forgive me. I don't mean to sound too harsh, but I include myself in this. I think from an overall perspective, from the leaders, those that are in the leaders, those that are in charge with leadership in our community, both men and women, we are failing at strategy when it comes to in prioritizing the youth and the next generation. We are failing at that. If we just take a step back and look at how much attention we place and how much investment we place into it. So I include myself in that as well. So us as leaders, we have to look at the needs of the community, where the community is going. We have to do an assessment, and we have to prioritize with the resources that we have our efforts. And I think that myself included, I think we've misprioritized some of the investment that should go into the youth and to continue leadership. Second, the second point is meeting them where they are. We held last year, we started a youth group. We held a barbecue, and it was a whole bunch of youth came out, young Muslims who grew up in the Houston community. I hadn't seen a lot of them in a long time. But they were happy. They were, some of them different levels of Islamic connection. Okay. Different levels of manifested morality, right? But they were there greeting each other, and some bonds started to reform. There's a lot of criticism about the event, and a lot of criticism about some of the people, etc. But what I found is that meeting them where they are is very important, and being patient, because most of them are still very much in the social space, right? So we break it into the 4 birds, government, education, business, and culture. Most of the young people are still very much existing in the cultural dynamic. A culture rules a lot of their life. So myself, I'm not necessarily a specialist of culture. So if I'm going to strategize and I'm going to be a leader, I would need to try to orchestrate with those who are more culturally adept to help organize events that can be targeted to the youth. So meeting them where they are and being patient is very important, like Imam Hanif mentioned. Third point is technology. I was watching a show. It's called American Gods, and we don't associate any partners with God, but this is the name of the show. And in the show, they were showing the outdated quote unquote gods versus the new gods. And in the show, the outdated gods, they were still using cassette tape and CD player and 8-track, etc. And the new quote unquote gods were technologically savvy. So what it was showing was a dynamic that's happening in the world is those people that are online, that are on YouTube. If you look at some of our Muslim brothers and sisters with millions of followers, those people that are using the technology, they are reaching youth, good and bad. So we're going to have to learn very quickly how to use technology to spread our message and connect with the youth. So there are some young people that are doing that effectively. African American and non-African American, but that's a very, very critical. As this COVID-19 has shifted, and technology is a huge piece of spreading the message now and connecting with people.
Alhamdulillah. So thank you, Imam Abdullah. Very, very profound comments, both you and Imam Hanif. Now I have to challenge you both. So as painful as it is sometimes, part of improving is critiquing. Right? So if I write an article, so I sit on the editorial board of a peer-reviewed journal. And for those who may not be familiar with that language, when someone sends an article into a journal and they want to be published, it has to be reviewed by 2 of their peers who's going to challenge their ideas to make sure their ideas are consistent with the published evidence in that particular field, right? And it goes through a process called review, to where their ideas are challenged by the reviewers, and they then write an answer to those challenges. They may change their arguments. They may say, no, I'm correct, and add additional evidence. But it's a process by which the overall strength of the article that's published is made better, because it's anonymously reviewed. So you don't know who the reviewers are, and the author doesn't know who the reviewers are, and the reviewers don't know who the author is. So it removes bias, and you take yourself out of it personally, because you don't know who wrote the article. You're just critiquing the article. And so this is a process by which they try to improve the quality of the articles that's published in what is referred to as scientific literature. So now I need to ask a very critical question. Why do you think, in addition to what you've already said, why do you think young people were leaving the masjid? Why was there flight away from the masjid? Why, when we go back a generation before me, you find family after family after family of people who were at the masjid, they were involved, but then each successive generation, to a certain extent, you have attrition. What do you think are some of the factors that cause that flight? I think the intellectually dishonest answer is, well, they didn't want Islam, so forget them. Since if they wanted Islam, they would be here. Now, I could be mistaken by making that suggestion, but I think true introspection or intellectual honesty would have you ponder the question, instead of just saying, well, the young adults are not interested, or the youth are not interested, and that's why they're not involved. And so I called on Hanif first last time. So Imam Abdullah, it's on you now.
Yes, so thank you, Imam. I think we could, from my perspective and my research and exposure, I think if I would break my answer into two. One would be external forces, and then the other would be internal forces. So yes, we are aware of the phenomenon of a person leaving the religion because their heart isn't with it. So as you said, if we place that phenomenon to the side and just look at those, so there are many young Muslims around who, after me engaging with them, they still have their heart is with the masjid, but they have stories, they have issues, right? So the external forces, we look at the external forces. Last year, I traveled to 7 countries by the mercy of Allah, and 3 of them were Muslim countries. And you saw the adhan being called in these countries, and people going to the masjid, but it was older people, pioneers would be in the masjid, and the younger people would still be out in the streets. So there is a global phenomenon where because of we're becoming a smaller community globally, the effects of culture, the strong call to culture, etc. That is a phenomenon that is affecting multinational communities. So that is a factor, right? So the culture of death, etc. I don't have to go into it. That is a factor. But at the same time, there are internal forces. I myself, I don't like to play the. I see this maybe as a maybe not the weaker position, but I don't want to seem like the victim. But I myself have run into and experienced in my coming back into or trying to reapproach the masjid, people that make comments, people that are harsh, etc. That aren't very well accepting, and they don't see that that the young person is in a process, right, of trying to find themselves and reacclimate. Then also we as African Americans, we have family issues that young women and young men, they tie to Muslim fathers and Muslim mothers. So that's another dynamic that's not spoken about much, where abuse that happened was not, it wasn't separated from the religion. This was a Muslim father that abused me, right? Or a Muslim mother. I'm sorry if I'm going. These are cases that I'm interacting with, right? But these are real cases where it would make me cry to hear that. Look, you know, I've turned away because this is a Muslim father and an imam, in some cases, unfortunately, who may have abused me, and now I've tied that. I haven't separated that abuse from the religion. So I think that we have to be very merciful and nurturing when we're meeting the youth where they are. And there's much more that can be said, but I'll just end my comments there.
Thank you, Imam Abdullah. Very, very profound conversation. But if we're afraid to have real conversations, we all might as well just go find something else to do.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, if not, we're kidding ourselves. We're placating ourselves. If we're afraid to have true, real, meaningful conversation, then we're just stroking our own egos. We're just sitting around wanting to have a good feeling instead of really wanting to deal with the challenges that we're facing. So thank you so much for that. Imam Hanif.
Yeah, so if we look historically of African Americans in America, and we think about the younger generation, who were their parents? So we look at about the age of, I would say, 1990 and above, who were the parents at that particular time. So those children, primarily, majority of those children were children out of wedlock. So if we think about that from that perspective, so Imam Wazir, you and myself, we came from two-parent households. Majority of our community came from two-parent households. So we're looking at the product of children that are parents that are coming from out of wedlock relationships. So that has a very profound effect on what we're looking at right now. So that's one thing. Number two, like Imam Abdullah Rasheed mentioned, so internal forces, external forces. So externally, the culture really got a grip on that particular generation. You know, and then we also have to look at how we treated those effects. How did we treat that? So when a young Muslim sister came to the masjid and she was pregnant, how sensitive were we to her plight? When a brother came to the masjid and said, you know what, Imam or brother so-and-so, I slipped up, I've been having premarital sex, how did we treat them? Did we treat them with the mercy that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had? So if we look at the external forces, what it caused, and then the internal reality of how we treated those situations, how do we deal with that dynamic? So you're looking at a generation of people that were told, not in no uncertain terms, but they were basically said, you don't belong at this place of worship because of what you did. So we became a little arrogant. We became a little holier than thou. We had this attitude that Muslims don't do that. So you're not a Muslim, so you're not particularly welcome here. So the effect of that is you saw a generation that basically didn't have a place. So Allah is forgiving. Allah says He's Al-Ghafurur Rahim, that He is the most merciful and He is all forgiving, most merciful. So if Allah is merciful and Allah is forgiving, how dare we not be forgiving and merciful to our own community? And so the breakup of the family unit is a big issue. The cultural dynamics is a big issue. But if we're going to be honest with ourselves, how did we deal with that particular trend? When our young sisters were having children out of wedlock, when our young brothers had baby mamas and things of this nature, how did we treat those particular issues? Were we forgiving and merciful enough to say, you know what, you made a mistake, dust yourself out, clean yourself up? Because most of our parents' generation, they came from those type of environments. And the Nation of Islam was a place that they came to get cleaned up. And so as we grew and we matured and we became into more knowledge, we start smelling ourselves a little bit with so much knowledge that we became less forgiving and less merciful.
Imam, can I say something for 30 seconds?
Go ahead, yeah. Okay,
so if you think about how Umar radiallahu anhu, he suspended the cutting of the hand in the famine. In Islamic law and fiqh, the environment, and even Imam Muhammad, I believe, would agree with this. The environment, you have to look at the environment. if the environment is so savage and such a strong grip that, and one, we're sending our young people to non-Muslim schools. If they're in that environment and we expect them not to suffer some of the consequences of being in that environment, so they may have a child out of wedlock, or they may be smoking marijuana, something like that. The way we deal with them has to, that occurrence has to be an identifier of something that of something that's happening with them, and then we have to look at how we can add some reinforcements to help them in that situation, rather than leveling them, flooring them, coming on the rostrum and blasting them, things like that. So that, from my perspective, I'm talking to some of the people, they still feel, they call it masjid hurt. I didn't know that was a term, but it's like they want to be connected. They have a connection, but there hasn't been a bridge back to allow them to come back into the fold.
So I have to challenge both of you. So how do you demand morality while at the same time navigating this mercy? Because are you all suggesting that it's tolerated? I mean, are you suggesting, so what exactly are you suggesting in terms of immorality and fornication and having babies out of wedlock and other things like that? Are you suggesting that those things be accepted in the community?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, of course. But we have to begin to look at what reinforcements can we bring to the table, right? So of course we have to give the best expression of the religion, and that is, of course, God consciousness, that's taqwa and things of that nature. But we also have to look at what causes these things to manifest itself in a community. So lack of established programs, lack of established, I would say, things that facilitate a process for our young people to get married, to get to know each other in a halal way, and not from a theorized perception, but something that is concrete. So for instance, I'll be real. Before I got married, there was no pathway to navigate the waters of how to get married, from an Islamic perspective. So of course, you're listening to music, you're looking at TV, you're looking at all of these different ways of how to get married, how to do all of those things, right? So of course, morality is at the forefront of our religion, but at the same time, the reality has to come into focus as well. Is that, yes, we understand that the culture has been corrupted, but how are we putting programs, and how are we facilitating situations that is going to combat these particular ills that we are facing? And then if so happen that we have our Islamic schools, that we have these programs, and somebody still slips up, how do we reinforce the best practices of the religion, and which includes mercy and forgiveness, but we're showing enough examples of how to go about doing these particular things, how to get married properly, how to go to school, and navigate that process of getting the education, going into business. And we have to have systems in place. And when we go to our jobs and we go to our profession and we establish businesses, we have systems in place that handle when things go wrong. So without a system in place to manage when things go wrong, and when things, and even Allah has a system. When we go astray, He has a system of getting us back on the Sirat al-Mustaqim. So the logic is there. We just need the application.
Yeah, I agree with Imam Hanif. Just a quick story. So when I was maybe about 12, maybe about 12, from 12 to about 18, this prime age of where the urges are kicking in, and you would be looking for a mate subconsciously, maybe not even consciously, understanding what's happening, but these you have these urges developing that should lead you to marriage. I had not seen or had close interaction with a Muslim woman at all for between that time, right? And this is not to criticize my parents or the community. This is just to say that during that time, this would have been the time that I may have been had some classes, had some had someone guiding me and walking me through this time to help me understand what is happening, letting me know, hey, there are Muslim sisters who are your age, encouraging us, showing us how to go about potentially courting and getting married. And I'm sharing this to say that, you know, it's the lack of the systems that the leaders have to look at and say, okay, are our people just consciously sinning? You know, are they? Do we have the systems in place? And we have a school, we have wholesome systems, we have family life, and they're just transgressing the bounds consciously? Or is it that we don't have the systems in place? So some of the repercussions of that is that our children are going to make mistakes. They may not, they'll have unguided actions because of the lack of some of the systems. And so they bear the burden of that, but we also bear the burden of it, right? So we should look at ourselves. If Allah says that we, the men, the leadership body, they are responsible for the community, right? You know, they are responsible for the community. Then if there are challenges, when Allah says, "Qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nar," save yourselves and your family from the fire, then that's saying, okay, well, we need to be looking at strategizing and how we can create systems to save them from the fire, right? So no, we are not saying that this is okay and this would be behavior that we would promote. But instead of, we find out those things, we hide the shame of the young and we try to help them. We don't spread the shame of the young and embarrass them and then turn them away.
So both of your statements lead us into another important, very important conversation. We have to keep it real. There is an epidemic of young Muslim women, in particular, African American educated women, from their mid-30s all the way through their mid-40s, even actually from the mid-20s, who need to get married. I have 4 daughters. One of them's in marriage age. I'm half joking, but I've thought to go online and just start interviewing suitors, just to go on Facebook one day and say, listen, if you're looking to get married, I'm looking for a suitor, a proper suitor for my daughter. So come on, call me up. Let's get started. But there's this epidemic, while at the same time, you have a number of Muslim men who are marrying non-Muslim women. And this creates a challenge. How do we address that while at the same time respecting the individual's rights to pursue what's lawful for them in religion?
I think we lost Imam.
Yeah. I'm gonna give him a moment to see if he comes back.
Okay.
But I think there he is.
Okay. I think you're up, Imam. Hanif.
You're on mute.
I'm gonna put you on, Hanif. My battery is dying. I'm sorry. I apologize. I have to go plug my new battery in. So I'm gonna be off the screen for a few minutes. But we'll go with Imam Hanif, then Imam Abdullah.
Well, okay. So the reality of the situation is, in dealing with this epidemic of women in our community between that age group of 30 and 40 not being married, that's a very complex issue to deal with, because there's so many factors that we're dealing with. So if you think about the dynamics that have affected us culturally as a community, the images of what is popular. We went through a phase of music and entertainment that shunned marriage. So if we take that into consideration, and also looking at how we've been able to combat that issue again. We don't have an institution set up that facilitates a unique way that's unique to our circumstances and our way of life of how to get married, how to facilitate relationships between male and female. I know for myself, Imam Wazir, there's several other of our peers that got married based on having that institution of the Young Adult Conference. A lot of us met our spouses in that type of environment. So with a lack of that type of institution, a lack of that type of facilitation where individuals can get to know people of the opposite sex and see them working, see their talents being manifested, it also puts us in a situation where we start to look at the people that are most closest to us, and not having a way to really facilitate a process of how to deal with male and female relationships. For example, if you take an educated woman who may be a lawyer, right, and in those spaces there may not be Muslims, and she comes back to the masjid and she doesn't see eligible mates at the masjid, then naturally a woman is going to gravitate to someone that is in her own peer group. So a successful woman is going to look for a successful man in those particular type of spaces, in absence of having an environment where they can see another person that is on their level of interest. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is without us having an institution that shows a way to get married. Number one, showing us what is the priority when it comes to getting married. The priority of us getting married is not necessarily wealth, beauty, all those different things. What facilitates a marriage, according to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, first and foremost is taqwa, God consciousness and piety. So with the messaging that's in our cultural environment, that's not praise. That's not something that someone is automatically looking for. They're looking for attractiveness, and then they're looking at those things that facilitate, quote unquote, a happy marriage, wealth, status, and all those different things. So we have to set up institutions that facilitate the best practices of our way of life, that facilitates those ways in a natural way where we can communicate and get to know someone's character and get to know each other in a natural way. The last thing I want to mention is this. If we're very, very honest, and when you talk to people who approach marriage, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, marriage is my sunnah, and it's my sunnah to get married, right? So if you're in an environment where most of the men are not looking to get married, and a sister puts pressure on a brother, and I don't mean this in a negative way, I mean this is just, just her presence as a Muslim woman sometimes putting pressure on a man to step up to that level of responsibility. So if you have 2 or 3 sisters out of 10 that are pious, they're righteous and everything else, but you have 7 other people, whether it's Muslim or non-Muslim, that are offering opportunities to have sex out of wedlock, that's going to allow you to date them and all those different things, naturally a person is going to choose the 7 instead of the 3. So we need to be able to facilitate processes where we see the numbers outgrow best practices of how to choose a mate versus being in environments where majority of it is going to be choices that are substandard according to our way of life.
Alhamdulillah, Imam Hanif, I agree with you. So I'm going to speak on just 2 points. The first point being that you're right, Imam Wazir, there is an epidemic amongst women, but there also is an epidemic amongst the young men. And I think that this constitutes the problem. Like a lot of times we look at the women and we say, there's a lot of unmarried women. There's a lot of unmarried women. But if I look around, and sometimes I look at from the rostrum and look at the floor, there may be 10, 15 young eligible in age, maybe not maturity or consciousness, able male bodies. So I think this is another area that we as leaders have to reprioritize, and that's the development of men. Of course, the development of women as well, but it seems that because of the external dynamic, the external dynamic is this. Like I mentioned, I've been to 7 countries. Every country I went to, the overarching ruleship or a leadership that had an oppressive class, they were killing the men in the oppressive class. Every place I've been to, and it was more apparent in some places than others. So we all know about what's happening, prison, the pipeline, different things that are happening externally outside of our community that's killing the men, effeminization, all the things they're putting in the cartoons, etc. So I believe what we're seeing is the external forces squeezing out, suffocating manhood. And the byproduct of that is, or the result of that is, young men between 20 and 30 that would have normally been voracious about getting married. They are at home playing video game, sort of just nonchalant, and sort of without a purpose, and other things. They may be in prison, etc. But I believe that as leaders, we need to reprioritize, one, reconnecting with the young men. Because I tell you this, when I made that shift and Imam Wazir pulled me into the leadership and the work, I had Brother Ahmed, Brother Elijah, Imam Khalil, Imam Wazir, other men who had families. And I was looking around at myself, and it only made me strive to reach inside of myself and pull out the potential, and live up to those that were around me. So I really feel strongly. We have a brothers meeting. I feel that we have dropped the ball when it comes to brotherhood. So therefore, the younger generation, the younger men, who a lot, as an external factor, a lot of them didn't have fathers in the home. Even in the Muslim community, the fathers weren't there, or if their fathers were working in the community, the fathers weren't there because they were working in the community. That's another thing, right? So I think as of right now, we're gonna have to have a strong focus on building bonds with the brothers and us being around each other, and us pushing the brothers. The women can put pressure on brothers, but that's gonna be received different. If a man puts pressure on another man because we build a relationship, that's a totally different dynamic. So I think that we're going to have to prioritize brotherhood and helping employ the men, helping them gain courtship skills, etc. And then once all the men in the community, the young men, are married, and there's still women left, then we can say, okay, well, there's still women, there's still sisters there. Then we may have to look for another alternative. But I really believe that we need to focus on raising up and making the young men stronger, because I believe now we have been emasculated.
So how do we? So one complaint that has come to me is that there are a lot of African American men who are marrying others who are not African American, and some women feel betrayed by this because they feel like you always have to remember, because of our shared experience and our shared history, that we always have to remember to make sure we take care of our women, and that was part of the ethos of the community historically. When from a straight halal and haram perspective, that's allowed. How do we even begin to deal with the sense of hurt that some women feel when they feel that their brothers who should be looking out for their best interests are looking outside of the community to find marriage, and they feel they should be looking inside the community. Now listen, I know that how you answer that question can hurt some people's feelings. So, but I trust that, we have to have these conversations, because these are real conversations. If we don't have them, then we're not truly addressing this perception that some women legitimately have in the community. So I'm not going to even pick one of you. Whoever wants to go first on that one, You can jump on it.
Beauty before age.
Either one of you want to? Either one of you have any thoughts on that?
Beauty before age. So Imam Wazir, I do echo your sentiment. That sentiment exists amongst men marrying Muslim women of other ethnicities, as well as men marrying non-Muslim women. That's another, if we just group them in together. It's a tough one because the women are hurt. I mean, I have you know, sister-in-laws, and I have a sister, I have women cousin, and so I hear these sentiments, and I'm sure you hear as well from, you have sisters, you have daughters, etc. I think too, it's a challenge. I think we would have to have some sort of reference point. So we do recognize that it's halal. We do. But from my orientation, I've heard Imam Muhammad say that, and this may have been a particular time in history, but I've gravitated towards this, that because of our shared experience, that we should be looking amongst us first. So, you know, sisters out there, I do share your concern with that, and I do express, you know, I don't want to say apology, but, you know, I am, from the male, the body of men, I do feel that we should be looking amongst our community first and taking care of our community first. I was traveling with an African brother from Nigeria, and he said to me, he said, brother, he told me and my brother, he said, you all should be ashamed of yourselves, the condition and the treatment that you have of your women. This is what he said to me. I'm a Muslim, he's a Muslim. He just said, you African-American Muslim men, you are not taking up the responsibility for your women that you should. So I say that to say that you aren't the only you aren't the only ones that have that concern, and that is the actual sentiment.
So I'll get straight to the point. So first and foremost, we have a shared experience. Us as African Americans, we have a unique experience, and with that unique experience, we're able to identify, you know, unique issues that we share amongst each other. We know if an African-American man sees another African-American man walking down the street, we automatically going to do, you know, the normal thing, give us a head nod, right? So that's just something that we know. That's a shared experience. That's a way of communicating. So us as men are African-American men, and as African-American women as well, we have a shared experience, and we should look to each other first to solidify and establish our community life first, because we have unique situations and problems that nobody else is facing throughout the world. You know, most people can look back, and I don't have to belabor the point, but most people can look back generation after generation after generation and see a connection with their tribe, with their ethnicity, with their nation, with their race. With the African Americans, we can only probably go back maybe 3, 4, 5 generations if we're lucky. So in order to preserve our life and our lifestyle, which is unique, and Allah appreciates the uniqueness, otherwise he wouldn't have given us this unique set of circumstances. So with that being said, I'm just going to read this. Somebody sent this to me. It says, there are more black male and female births. There are more black male than female births in the United States. However, by the time the two reach 18 and you factor in homicide, suicide, incarceration, black females outnumber black males 7-1. The black males effectively dying at the rate of an endangered species. So I said that to say this: with those unique problems, it takes unique communication, unique kindred spirits, unique conversations that need to happen, unique sets of strategies that have to happen. In absence of that, you're going to see the byproduct of what we see now, that people are going to choose whatever they feel is going to make them feel better, right? So a lot of times marriage is emotional, but as we know, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam advised us not to marry emotionally first. That should not be the priority. So we have to look at this logically. We have to look at this strategically and think about ways how we can repair the relationship between the African male and African-American male and the African-American female. There's a lot of unaddressed trauma that we have to address to repair this relationship. And in absence of that, the byproduct of that is what we see. So we can cast blame on both sides, the male and the female, but the reality is, moving forward, we have to put together a strategy and a way that we can facilitate a way that we can handle the issues that are facing us uniquely, and that starts at home and it starts with marriages.
Well, thank you both. There was a comment on Facebook. There was a comment made on Facebook that, with all due respect, there should have been some female representation on this panel, considering the topics presented. And I'll acknowledge that that's a very good comment. Thank you for that recommendation. There was another comment that said there is not an we need a project like Habitat for Humanity type project that gets our youth all on the same task, that gets their emotion, commitment involved, and allow them to build camaraderie. There's not enough leaders that are still actively involved and connected in the areas where severe guidance is needed, such as Section 8 housing, the slums or ghettos of those areas, et cetera, et cetera. So we want to thank all of you who have joined us on Facebook and who are enjoying this conversation. And we welcome, we appreciate your comments, and we appreciate your directions and suggestions for improvement, because the biggest, I know this is gonna sound corny and cliches, but the biggest room in all of our houses is the room for improvement. MashaAllah, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. But so then now we have to follow this vein down is where it's taken us, because what I remember when Imam Muhammad was asked about marrying non-Muslim women, he said he would search the 1 billion Muslims on the face of the earth. And he said, if I was not able to find a Muslim woman after searching the 1 billion people on the face of the earth, he said, then I would consider marrying someone who wasn't Muslim. And that's no disrespect to our Christian brothers and sisters. That's no disrespect to our Jewish brothers and sisters, but it's our obligation as Muslim men to make sure that our women are taken care of, and that they're cared for, and that they're responded to. But now, if what you said is correct, Imam Hanif, if there's 1 to 7 African-American Muslim females versus males, I'm not gonna ask either one of you this, because there's no woman to answer this. But so then the flip side comes, should African-American females be looking outside of African-Americans for mates? Should they be looking for Muslims outside of African-Americans for mates? But we will, in respect to the comment that the sister made, that there should be a sister on the panel, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. And you all know me, I would appoint one right now. If we were at the masjid, I would call one up from the audience, but unfortunately, we don't have that circumstance and that situation. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. So my next question is on successful marriages. We have many marriages in our communities that have not been successful. We have a divorce rate in our community. So what do we do that once we get married, we stay married? So what do we do to build success in marriage? And how do we begin to address the challenge of failed marriages and failed relationships in the Muslim community? And we will acknowledge it. They sometimes they fail because of incompatibility. They fail because of abuse. Sometimes they fail because of infidelity. They fail sometimes because people just aren't good matches for each other. Whatever the reason, how do we begin to work toward more solid and stable marriages in our community? Imam Abdullah.
So alhamdulillah, I think that's an excellent question. So Imam, my wife and I, we have 4 children. We both just turned 30, and mashallah, our parents have known each other for over 50 years, and they're connected. So we are deeply ingrained in the community, and what we've noticed is that even with all of those connections, we have to do. There are 3 things that we, as a married couple, there's more, but there are maybe 3 things I would like to mention. One, we need mentorship. So if we can create some sort of process, support group, we have one here in Houston, but creating a marriage support group is a very important institution to have in the community, because there will be areas of growth for both the man and the woman. And a lot of that, there's introspection, but then there has to be a mirror. There has to be sounding boards. There have to be people that are more mature to that both the man and woman can look at individually as well as collectively in order to help strengthen the marriage. So our marriages, they aren't isolated institutions. They're institutions within the larger institution, which is the community. So the marriage support groups or marriage support institutions are extremely important to have. And then secondly, I'll have to go back to this. A strong brotherhood and a strong sisterhood also support the marriage. We had a brother session, and there's a lot of things that came out in the brother session where brothers were speaking about issues that they were having. They were able to speak to each other. So that communal support for both brothers and sisters to have support outside of their own marriage, that's also important. So community level marriage institution support, then the brotherhood and sisterhood are very important for the supporting of a marriage, in my perspective. And then third, we really need to invest into some sort of counseling as well, and encourage counseling. I believe that our community, I think growing up, I've always looked at counseling as a negative, as something that, maybe mentally deranged people or mentally challenged or people that had, severe mental problems, they went to counseling. But as I aged and grew and matured, I found that counseling for individual as well as marriage counseling to invest in the marriage as well as resolve issues is a very, very important factor of supporting marriage. So I think those who are in leadership, the professionals, we need to promote all those 3 things that I mentioned: the marriage support groups, events, and things like that, where married couples can come together, brotherhood and sisterhood, and as well promote counseling, going to counseling. Don't allow things to erode because there are some issues that you cannot resolve between yourselves. As the Quran says, you find a wise person from each side, or one wise person, however that manifests itself best for your situation. That's something that's mentioned in the Quran. So if it's mentioned in the Quran, that must be a very important, universal, long-lasting, perpetual solution that will always be needed.
Well,
Go ahead, Imam Hanif.
I'm gonna preface what I'm getting ready to say by saying I don't mean this to be insensitive to our current condition, but I'm going to use our current condition as a metaphor. And what I mean by current condition, I'm talking about COVID-19. We have an epidemic that we're all facing, right? And it's forced us to really look at solutions to how we handle this situation. So this epidemic with the divorce rate and everything else, we're looking at it from this perspective, and that's this. When the rest of the world gets a cold, African Americans catch the flu. So whatever problem is facing the rest of society, it affects African Americans the worst. So on one hand, divorce is not unique to African Americans, but it poses unique set of circumstances that African Americans face. So how do we resolve the solution? The same way that the body reacts to any other situation. When one part of the body is affected, the rest of the whole body comes to its rescue. So we need an all-out focus group on how to handle the situation of that we call the institution of marriage. And from the whole life cycle, from the individual to the marriage coming together, to the family, to the different stages of marriage, to the different levels of family. So before children, while you have children, as your children begin to leave the house. So all of those different things that affect the lifestyle of marriage, we need to address it, because we've gone so long in all of our issues. We've been going on for so long with unaddressed trauma. So trauma has entered into our community. It has entered into our marriages. It has entered in everything, but we haven't addressed it. And to Abdullah's point, and I was going to bring that up, therapy, counseling, all of those different things from an individual standpoint and from a collective family. So we need counseling for individuals. We need counseling for married couples. We need family counseling. So also, with that being said, we need more African-American Muslim psychologists, psychiatrists, family counselors, and things of that nature. So this situation with marriage in the African-American community, it poses unique set of circumstances that we don't have time to provide solutions here. But I think we need a step-by-step approach of the whole family life cycle, from the individual to the married couple, to families with children, families without children, and then as children progress and go out into the lifestyle and get married on their own.
Thank you, alhamdulillah, Imam Hanif. Very excellent comments, Imam Abdullah. Very excellent comments. When y'all finish, read the comments on Facebook, because there's a very lively, y'all getting, this session is getting very lively responses on Facebook. And that's part of the reason I made a decision not to go into my solo presentation, because I was supposed to go into a solo presentation at 7:20. But if you see people are benefiting from something, you should allow that to continue for the sake of the audience. Now, my next question. Houston is the most diverse city in America, documented by Dr. Stephen Kleinberg, a sociologist at Rice University. And as you know, Mercy Community Center, one of our other locations, and Ibrahim Islamic Center, they're very diverse communities. And in both of those communities, African Americans are not the majority. I'm not sure about Ibrahim Islamic Center. I believe that's the case with Ibrahim Islamic Center. But African Americans are not the majority of the attendees. African Americans are the majority attendees at Masjid W.D. Muhammad. And that's changing rapidly too. That's changing very quickly. If you look at the demographics of those who attend, especially Jumat Masjid W.D. Muhammad, the proportion as African American is shrinking. And the proportion that's from diverse ethnic and racial groups is increasing. The majority of people who attend Masjid Ta'aleem are African American, and the majority of people who attend Fifth Ward Islamic Center are African American. So of the 5 masjids that kind of come from a similar set of circumstances, and we'll include Masjid Tawheed too, because Masjid Tawheed came out of, Imam Qasim Khan came out of the Nation of Islam, and he was once very close in terms of his association with the leadership of Imam Warathat Muhammad. So if we include 6 masjids, 4 of them are probably predominantly attended by African Americans. 4 of them are not. So my next question is, how do we embrace the universal Muslim community? How do we embrace our identity as Muslims? How do we place our identity as Muslim above our racial and ethnic identity without losing the historical connections and losing the ability to address our unique circumstances, our unique historical circumstances as African Americans in America.
So either one of us go first?
Yeah, yes, either one.
Well, I would say this first and foremost, as African American Muslims, first and foremost, we have to appreciate our unique set of circumstances, our unique contribution to the United States of America and to the world. Without that first, it doesn't matter how we go out and interact with people outside of our community. If we don't preserve and have an appreciation for our unique history, our unique contribution, and if we don't preserve our individual identity, we won't be able to interact with people of different ethnic groups that are Muslim, and different races, ethnicities, and things of that nature. So first and foremost, we have to appreciate who we are, understand our self-worth, have the correct identity of us as individuals, and then, and only then, can we go out and have healthy conversations, and we can have effective contributions. Because without that, we will always continue to have this sense of we're not enough, or we're not worthy of enough. So we have to appreciate with confidence the unique set of circumstances that were ushered in by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, Malcolm X, all of the leaders that came through the Nation of Islam, Imam W.D. Muhammad. We have to preserve, protect that, and have our sense of self-worth and that identity. And then we can have healthy conversations, healthy engagement. Once we understand that we are established to a certain degree, we can begin to interact and engage healthily with Muslims of different races and ethnicities. With that being said, Allah appreciates diversity, but as we know, that shouldn't usurp or be the priority amongst Muslims, but we all have to respect our diversity as well. And I think that once we have that as African Americans, then we can have healthy discussions, more healthy discussions. Not that we're not doing it now, but I believe that we can make more of a contribution, a greater impact. Because although Houston, we've done a good job here, I'm speaking more collectively around the United States and the world. But I think that we definitely have something great to offer. We have a great contribution to make, not only to the United States, but the world. But we have to preserve our identity, preserve our self-worth before we begin to really take the necessary step that we need to take, and not having that void or the insecurity or whatever complexes that come along with that.
Yes, sir. So I was listening to a Ramadan session just recently, and what I'm going to say, Imam Muhammad has said it, rahimahullah, in different contexts. But he had mentioned that and you alluded to it earlier, Imam Wazir, that what happened to us as a people formed us as a new people, and most of us are aware and have heard of that. But what I'm thinking is that in my father's generation, and maybe beyond, we were very careful not to integrate in a way that we would lose our identity and the historical significance of what the great leaders and pioneers have established. So I grew up under this idea where we shouldn't reach out and we shouldn't connect to other Muslims, and I think it was strategy to that. Because we are still very much forming as a people. As traveling to different places, I can see the four birds that Imam Muhammad rahimahullah pointed us to establish: educational institutions, business and economics, government, strong government, and culture. Some of the greatest people, they have mastered those areas, or they have become proficient in 3 or 4 of those, 2, 3 or 4 of those areas. So I think from our perspective, we're still forming. So we are a little bit, we're gradually opening up. So from what I would like to say is that I believe that when we should take account of what we have and what our contribution can be to others. And then we look at what it is that the areas that we are lacking in or we need assistance in. And our relationship that we build is a mature relationship saying, here are our gifts and strengths and contributions. And here are the things that we know that you all are strong in, and we can engage into a relationship based on our strengths and serving each other based on strengths and weaknesses. And I think if the leaders, those who are both men and women, are engaging each other, that can help trickle that mindset down into the community. But if we enter as subclass Muslims, which some will impose that on us. I'm not trying to take that away. Some will definitely impose that on us. But I believe we have to take account of what we are strong with, and also take account and assess our weaknesses, and enter into the contribution, into the relationships, being aware and being confident of what we have, what we can contribute, and then what we also are looking for when it comes to the lita'arafu, coming to know each other, coming together for the greater benefit of the universal community. Inshallah.
So, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I want to thank both Imam Abdullah Rasheed and Imam Hanif Khalil for their comments this evening. There was a Ramadan session I was at, and Imam Muhammad rahimahullah alayhi, he talked about dialectical discourse and dialectics, and the distilling ideas through discussion, engagement, debate, argument. We can never be, the Quran comes to tackle big issues. The Quran comes to address the big issues in life. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had to deal with the big issues, the big realities that existed as part of the human experience, and as part of his the growth and development of his companions. And the Quran comes to give us a logic so that we can address these issues, and we can address them in such a way that cultivates us as human beings to move us on toward the destiny. We all have to remember that if we don't address if we don't have conversation, if we don't acknowledge these issues that may not be pleasant conversation, or that may not be easy conversations, then you never tackle the issues, and you leave your community and you leave the believers without proper engagement, so that those who may need assistance and those may need help, they can get that assistance and they can get that help. So it's important that we have conversations like this. It's important that we have real conversations like this. I was at a convention once. It was an ICNA convention. And this was a long time ago. And my statements are nothing against the organization of ICNA at all. My statements are only based on that's where the conference was that we was at. And this was when Imam Qasim rahimah alayhi, he was still alive. And he was given a presentation on domestic abuse. And he said, any man that abuses his wife is no more than an animal. And then he went to give his support from the Quran, and he went on to give his support from the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And what happened after that changed my perspective in a real way, because after his presentation, around 15 Muslim women lined up. And this was 20 years ago. So the condition may have changed. This was 20 years ago, so the condition may have changed, but I'm not sure, but a line of Muslim women lined up, and they were coming up, and they were talking about the abuse in the community. They were talking about how their husbands will hit them because they know they wear scarves and they know they're covered up, where their husbands would hit them in places where they knew they wouldn't be able to see signs of the abuse. because the way that they would dress and how the women would go into the back. And when they were alone, they would talk about how this abuse. And we know domestic violence isn't an issue in just the Muslim community. We know domestic violence is an issue in the human family. And we all know that instances of domestic violence increased during COVID-19. But if as Muslims, if we act that like these problems don't exist in our communities, then we are doing a disservice to ourselves. We're doing a disservice to our families. We're doing a disservice to the abused. And please don't take what I'm saying the wrong way, but we're also doing a disservice to the abuser, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when you see your brother in the wrong, hold him back, right? Because he says, support your brother if he's in the right or if he's in the wrong. And see, before the Prophet brought the Quran and before he brought his logic on how to live life, that saying existed among the Arabs. So it really goes if he's the oppressed or if he's the oppressor when you read the Arabic, okay? Because it comes from zalam, that's where the word comes from, zalam. So help your brother if he's the oppressed or if he's the oppressor. And before the Prophet came, the Arabs understood that to be, if your brother's being oppressed, stop him from being oppressed. And if your brother's the oppressor, help him be the oppressor. So when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made this same statement, it confused the companions, because they knew that before Islam, help your brother when he was in a wrong meant help him do wrong. So they said, Ya Rasulullah, we understand how to help him if he's doing right. But how do we, help him if he's the oppressed? But how do we help him if he's the oppressor? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, hold him back. Prevent him from being the oppressor. So when we don't address these issues, we are doing a disservice to the ones that are abused most importantly, but we're also doing a disservice to those who are the abusers, who need help, who need to understand why they're the way they are, who may need some psychological help, some psychological counseling, or just may need to be separated in such a way that they cannot perpetuate the abuse that they're perpetuating. So listen, alhamdulillah, it was wonderful having you both on. Thank you. I know it was short notice, mashallah, but you always have to be ready. You always have to be ready at all times. As we were trained by the late, great Imam Qasim Ahmed, who trained us, that we keep 10 khutbahs in our pocket, and that we're ready to serve the need whenever we serve the need. And there is a need for us to continue to address these problems moving forward. So inshallah, thank you all for attending. It's a few minutes. I think we're 10, 15 minutes, maybe 18 minutes from iftar. So mashallah, we're going to conclude with the evening. I'm going to ask the director extraordinaire, Imam Ahmed Shaheed, who wears 20 different hats, mashallah, and who's a workaholic. I've never met someone. I've met many workers, but what I'll say is, whenever you see Ahmed, he's busy doing something. He's busy working on something. You never see Ahmed sitting around chilling, ever. You know, if he's at the masjid and not running some video someplace or coordinate something, he has his children. So he is a worker. So alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. May Allah forgive us. May Allah guide us. May he make us whole. May he forgive us. May he bless us with the best of Ramadan. May he accept our intentions. May he accept our fasting. And we will see you tomorrow as we wrap up. And we have a whole day tomorrow, full of presentations all day. So it's only going to get better because the presenters are dynamic tomorrow. So I'm going to turn the program over to the producer, Imam Ahmed Shaheed. Are you there, Ahmed? If you're there, I'm turning the program over to you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Ramadan Mubarak. So we have concluded day two of our Ramadan conference. And again, if you would like to be able to watch any of the, you came in the middle, you want to catch up, just please come back. You can find it on our Facebook page at Masjid WDM, or you can go to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/c/Masjid WDM, for you to watch all of the past Ramadan conferences and the past sessions. And we try to break them up very similar to the way, if you're looking at our screen, the way our screen is broken up right now, to a part 1, part 2, part 3, and done our best to try to keep that consistent. So please go out there and check that out. And tomorrow's lineup is going to be very dynamic. Well, we start at 10:30. Today we started at 11:30, but tomorrow we'll start at 10:30 a.m. So take your nap, do your reading, and be ready to watch with us at 10:30 a.m. Starting with Imam Omar Ali Muhammad and Imam Basil Abdullah of Masjid Talim, the first masjid built by indigenous Muslims in the city of Houston from the ground up. Then we'll have a recitation from our weekend school class, specifically my class. My wife is 7 and under, so don't miss that. And then followed by Imam Omar Shakir. And then part 2, we'll take a break for Zuhr, have part 2 with the Sisters Halakha, and which will be a panel of sisters in our youth summit. And please, from the comments and everything else, please continue that comments. We'll continue to try to have an interaction with our panelists, and we please forgive us for not answering any of your questions. We'll try to follow up with a couple of them offline, but alhamdulillah, we will try to be more interactive and have asked most of our imams to save time for questions, but you want to get them in as early as possible. And then we'll end with Sister Fatima Ali and Imam Fahim Shawad. So again, we're streaming online at Facebook and YouTube. And if you are only able to listen on your phone, we do have the phone number out there as well. But I want to reiterate that again, programs like this only happen through your support. So please, if you're able to make your donations, we're not charging anything for this free streaming Ramadan session, but we ask that if you are able to, please make a donation to www.masjidwdmuhammad.com, and then you can make your donation via for our zakat, for our building fund, which is helping to build our community center so that our masjid has a home for the families and the children, and so they don't tear up our new masjid, and also just to help keep the lights on, put the AC on, help us to be able to stream and continue to bring programs like this. So if you are able, please make your donations there, and also your donations for COVID-19 Pandemic Relief Fund. We've had a relief fund now for a couple of years, mostly due to hurricanes, but now that relief fund has shifted to help serve the needs of COVID-19 population. So we've done curbside iftars, we're doing food distribution drives, and giving out financial contributions for those who have been severely affected, but that is only due to donations that come in to us. So please continue to donate, please continue to give. Our new Muslim orientation class is every Sunday at 3 p.m. It will be suspended this Sunday due to the Ramadan conference, but next Sunday, again, that session will be at 3 p.m. And if you would like to register, please fill out the bit.ly/new Muslim orientation and go to that website, fill out the form, and you'll get information about how to join. And again, if this is going too fast, I'm talking too fast, you can always hit Alt-Control Print Screen. That's Alt-Control PRTSC on your keyboard, and that'll save the image that's on your screen, and then you can paste that with a Control-V into Word or PowerPoint or something else, so you can get this information later, or you can simply just pause when you see the video, run it back and pause where you are right now so you can write down that information. And again, lastly, next Sunday for our local community, we'll be doing food dry goods, food box distribution here at the masjid. Stay in your vehicle. We'll put the box in your car, but it'll be from noon to 2 p.m. And inshallah, we'll also be doing iftars that night, but that hasn't been confirmed. Just stay on the lookout for that to be confirmed at our Masjid WDM Facebook page for us to send that information out as well. Lastly, there is a daily Ramadan Quran reading program for sisters only, where the sisters get together and they take turns reading the Quran so that they can complete the juice for the day. If you would like to register, the registration information is on the screen. Please, again, you can alt control print screen, or you can, once this video is done, go back to it, pause right here, and you'll be able to capture this information as well, or you can pause on your screen. But this has been a dynamic program my wife has listened to every once in a while, and I don't listen to it because it's for sisters only, but it's out there for your benefit. Again, we continue to have our Ramadan talks, so you can continue to interact with Imam Wazir Ali, our resident Imam, and the other Imams of Masjid Orthodox Muhammad and Mercy Community Center every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during Ramadan. That's obviously suspended right now, but next Sunday, next weekend, we will start that program again. And we continue to have our virtual khutbahs 1:30 every Jumu'ah, every Friday, again on Facebook and YouTube. And we also have our weekend school, which is also going online, and our public address, which will be Sunday at 1:30. So please look out for that as well. So we have a public address or a talim every Sunday at 1:30 that is also streamed through these locations as well. So stay tuned. We look forward to seeing you next week. Tomorrow at 10:30. And we will, inshallah, see you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ramadan Mubarak.